Hello, everybody. We're on to our next section of development, and this is called parenting styles. So put that at the top. All right, I'm gonna try to go as quickly as I possibly can. All right, so there are technically four types of parenting styles that was developed by Diana. Let me write her name down. Her name is Diana Baumrind, something like that. Okay, so let's start with the first one. And disclaimer, this is good information. Please do not start bashing your parents and thinking they're horrible people if they have, if they're any of these, because the reality is that, look, parents do not come with a book, a parenting book. The more psychology and more research they have, the more information is out there. And parents are learning just like you guys are learning as well. Okay? So keep that in mind. Um, Parents are trying the best they can with what they know. So be compassionate with them. Okay? All right. So let's start with the first one, which is the authoritarian parent. Okay? And this is your dictator. We're going to be writing all these things down. I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible. So pause. Try not to put me so quickly speed there. All right. So these are your dictators. They're dictators as parents. They impose rules and expect obedience, but there is no child's input, right? They have a lot of rules, and even if you think that it's unfair, the parent doesn't want to hear it. So they have very strict punishment styles. And typically, the reality is they just want to protect the child, okay? They tend to limit and control a child's verbal exchange. It's usually like it's my way or the highway type of thinking. Now, you need to know the effects of this type of parent on a child as they grow. So, one of the effects is going to be, right? So, write this down. One of the effects is that typically children that have authoritarian parents, they have difficulties making decisions for themselves. They tend to lack a little bit of social skills and self-esteem. They have poor initiative, and typically when given the freedom, they tend to make poor decisions, okay? Because they never had that autonomy to make it or feel like they're able to verbalize, their thoughts. Okay? The next type of parenting style is going to be the permissive parent. Okay? And this one is typically the parent that basically submits to all of the child's desires, any type of ideas the child has, or any of the wants, then the parent is going to follow through. They make very few demands and they use very little punishment. And sometimes, even like their punishment is very sporadic and it's unpredictable. So the child really doesn't understand um, like when they're going to get punished or not. So it's kind of like they're always constantly pushing the envelope. This is when the parent also puts very little, few limits or boundaries on the child. It's more like a friendship than a parent. And they basically let the child do whatever they want and have whatever they want. Sounds great, but actually, there's some negative effects when it comes to that. So some effects of a permissive parent on the child is the child tends to be a lot more impulsive, demanding. They have poor like in social settings, like that back and forth, the interactions with others, they tend to have a little bit difficulties in social settings. And then they tend to also be a little bit more aggressive and immature. Okay. Now, the next one is going to be what's called the authoritative parenting style. Authoritative, and I put here, if you notice, I kind of underlined two different things here. I put authoritate and then authoritative and tative because it's kind of like combining, if you look here, the permissive And then this part, authoritative, with the authoritarian parent, because those do get a little confused. So this is kind of like a combination of both the authoritarian parents and the permissive parents. It's kind of the like the perfect yin and yang, okay? It's a perfect balance, okay? So authoritative parents, they are demanding, they do have boundaries, they do have rules. However, the difference is that they will explain the rules so that the child understands why those rules are in place. And they also have like an open discussion with the child, especially when they're making rules and then even allowing some expectations. Okay. This is going to encourage independence. So there's a little bit more independence, like allowing the child to problem solve and then coming to a decision together. Um, but of course, they still have boundaries and limits when it comes to certain behaviors. One of the effects of this having an authoritative parent is they tend to be socially competent. They're more resilient. They're a lot more independent, high self-esteem, and they do a really good job interacting in social settings. Okay, so this is what they're saying. Authoritative parenting is always your go-to. You want to be more an authoritative. Now, as time goes on as a parent, um, you sometimes have to shift a little bit, right? Sometimes you have to be a little bit more authoritarian with the child if you need to. Sometimes a little bit permissive, especially as children get older. But the best parenting style is, and the most effective, is going to be the authoritative parenting, right? It just allows for, you want boundaries. Boundaries are really important for all humans. Um, but allowing that give and take, okay? And the last one, the last parenting style is basically, and there's some contradiction because some people are saying it's not really a parenting style. And this is the neglectful or rejecting. And this is when the parent is basically a lack of parent involvement. They're not involved in the child's life, in the decision making, in taking care of the child. This can typically happen if the parent works a lot or the parent doesn't live with them, right, due to a divorce, or if they live far away from each other. Um, so this is typically those type of like the parenting that happens. Now, the effect of this one is that the child believes that the parent's life is more important than their own. Okay, so they feel like they are not significant or important enough to be in that parent's life, or that parent chooses to be with that child, right? So they feel like they're not choosing to be with me, that something may be wrong with me, or my parents' need is more important than my own. Another effect of this type of parenting is that they tend to handle independence poorly, as well as poor self-control. All right, so just keep that in mind. Now, there is these charts right here, and I would like you to write this down and have this in there. I know it's a little blurry, but I do want you to have this in your notes. So I will be looking for this, that you have your authoritative parent, right? So authoritative has like a little bit of a mix, right? When they tend to be, parents need to, or tend to be more nourishing, affectionate, they set boundaries. Their discipline is with through guidance. It's not just like what I say goes. Then you have the authoritarian parent. They're more strict, inflexible. They have high expectations. That's another one. They tend to be like, punishment is really, really strict and firm. Then you have permissive parents. They're nurturing and affectionate. However, they have very few rules or boundaries, and they tend to be inconsistent. It's not always great to have that. We like predictability in life. Okay, and then the uninvolved parent, again, they're emotionally detached, they're self-absorbed, they're inconsistent, or they might not even have any boundaries at all. Okay, so make sure that you have this. This is just another one. Um, if you want to also include that in there, it's just good information to know, especially when it comes to what's being supportive or unsupportive, as well as demanding or undemanding. Okay, so as you see, authoritative parent uses both. The authoritarian is more unsupportive with demanding, and then it kind of works this way that the permissive, they're supportive but they're not demanding, and then you have the rejecting, which is pretty much the worst one in the sense of how it affects the child, is that unsupportive and undemanding for the child. All right, and that's it for parenting styles. See, nice, short and sweet.